session. We're happy to bring us together, please. Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the special meeting of the Board of Directors of the Midpeninsula Regional Open Space District. I am Jed Sear, President of the Board of Directors. The meeting is now called to order and I have 7:10. Thank you. Maria, we have a couple of folks who wish to say something.
We do have oral communication, but if we can take oral roll call first.
Okay, let's do that then. Roll call first and then we'll do.
Thank you. Director Gleason?
Here.
Director Christine Tucker?
Here.
Director Riffle?
Here.
President Sear?
Here.
Director McNiven?
Here.
Sorry for your name for a minute. And Director Holman and Kishimoto are absent. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we have a couple of folks who wish to say something about an item not on the agenda.
President Sear, if I could, Hillary Stevenson, General Counsel. Briefly, I just want to make the report out of closed session.
Would you please?
Sure. Let's see. The board met in closed session this evening at 6 p.m. and took no reportable action. The board also met last September 25th in closed session and also took no reportable action. Thank you, President Sear.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a question, a person who wishes to speak to us about the BD Property Trail project. Mr. Franklin?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Say B-E-E. Good evening, everybody. Here we go. How's that?
Wonderful, thank you.
Excellent. So my name is Dirk Franklin. My family and I are long-term residents of Los Gatos, frequent users of El Sereno and Sierra Azul open spaces. We are hikers, bikers, and dog walkers. I personally use these open spaces 4 to 5 times per week. And I just want to say, I'm a huge fan of the Beatty Property Project. So good work there, gentlemen and ladies. And I look forward to seeing it moving forward soon. As a matter of fact, I'm doing French broom removal there tomorrow. And specifically, I support building the 2-mile connector trail that goes from Lexington Reservoir to Upper Priest Rock Trail, as well as the optional half-mile connector to Lower Priest Rock Trail. Additionally, Midpen has proposed some options to connect St. Joseph's Hill to Lime Kiln Trail, then additionally to Priest Rock Trail, which would then link into the Beatty property trails. And of course, I'm a fan of building them all. It would be a tremendous boost to the amount and quality of local trail experiences for all users. It would take some of the congestion off St. Joseph's Hill, as trail users are able to spread out more. It would enable easy access from downtown Los Gatos. Trail users can recreate directly from town, saving car trips on Highway 17 and Alma Bridge Road. User experience. These new trails will be built to modern grading techniques, which are more inclusive for all trail users, unlike what we have today with the wall and dog meat, which go from 15 to 25%, only for the hardiest of souls. It also keeps users off of Alma Bridge Road. The connector trails will enable users to avoid Alma Bridge Road altogether while still enjoying the entire preserve. Newt migration, all right, this is an important thing. Using the connectors should keep most of the park open during the newt migration timeframe. Example, you could close the lower part of the new Beatty Trail just below the optional connector into Priest Rock to keep people from dropping down into Lexington Reservoir and keep that road traffic off of Alma Bridge. Also, road construction on Alma Bridge Road will be very disruptive to residents and open space users. By building a trail network now, the open space can operate with very little impact and conflict. Further benefits, trail building is the cheapest line item on the master plan. No need to wait for the approval and large funding requirement and construction time to modify Alma Bridge to start the trail work. These trails could be open and delighting users before the first jackhammer starts on Alma Bridge Road. Thank you for your consideration.
And you say we have someone online, Maria?
President Seer, I did have someone that would like to speak virtually, Jeff King, but I did not see him online. Oh, he's in person. Ta-da. Thank you.
Hi, guys.
If
this
you
still
would
on?
Fill out the
Hi, guys.
card when you're done, please.
I'm Jeff King, and I'm also a resident of Los Gatos and a frequent traveler up El Sereno and Sierra Azul open space. And basically, I spend a lot of my energy and I'm volunteering now with Midpen, with Post, with Santa Cruz Mountain Stewardship. I've joined up with Silicon Valley mountain bikers and California mountain bikers, and I'm really, really passionate about getting people outside, especially our kids. I mean, get them off their Xboxes, off their phones, and off their computers, and get them outside. And Los Gatos is essentially completely landlocked with all of the open space around us controlled by Midpen. It's up to you guys, right, to make some interesting things happen. And I'll say, my message tonight, really, it's time to start building some trails, right? We have essentially no interesting single track trails accessible from Los Gatos. All of the trails in El Sereno and Sierra Azul are essentially steep, gravelly, hot, uncovered track roads that are essentially made for PG&E vehicles to get to their power poles. And it's great that we can get out there, but honestly, to have something interesting that people want to ride would be a game changer for Los Gatos. And I've seen the plans that you guys have, all the paperwork like around the Beatty property and the Highway 17 overcrosses, all of those connector trails. It's time to start building those things. That's really what I'm excited about. And it is really up to Midpen to make that happen. I think we should build the connector trails down from St. Joseph's Hill, just like our friend here said. We should add all those new trails in the Beatty property, the connectors up to Priest Rock, and there could be some really interesting trails that people actually want to ride. And I think the town of Los Gatos, there's 35,000 people that could bike there from town. It's only about 2.5 miles from Los Gatos High to the trailhead, right at Beatty. And I think Campbell, South San Jose, and other parts all would come in on bikes, right? Not actually in cars. So this could be a really exciting thing. And I'll say, let's start with the trails. Like, the parking is unnecessary. Like, this is accessible from town and we can get going there. I think you guys have done an incredible job acquiring this property. It's amazing that we have this fund to pick up places like Beatty. But really, the exciting part, and I think that could energize the entire area, is just waiting for us to get some trails and get the dirt built. I'll say this again, it's time to start building, and let's build some interesting, fun trails that can get people outside. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else, Maria? No?
No, that's it.
None? Thank you. And then if you could fill out the card, please. Thank you, Brendan. Okay. Now we have, excuse me, that was the closed session. Okay. I didn't read this other part. The meeting is being held in person at the district's administrative office and by teleconference. Members of the public may attend and participate in the meeting in person or via Zoom. Instructions for submitting public comments are available on the meeting agenda. So for the regular session, would you please call the roll?
You've already taken the roll.
Oh,
Thank you.
that's, you already got that. All right.
Mhm.
And we just had comments from the public. And may I have a motion to adopt the agenda unless a member of the board wishes to pull an item?
Sorry, we're on the agenda or the consent?
I think we should start on the agenda.
Right. Okay,
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, Did you roll call vote, please, Maria?
Director Gleason?
Yes.
Director Christine Tucker? We'll come back to her in a minute. Director Biffle?
Yes.
President Seer?
Yes.
Director McNiven?
Yes.
And Director Christine Tucker? She is online, so she was there a minute ago. So we can pass it with
Sorry. Here I am, plugging back in. Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Does any member of the board have anything you wish to pull from the consent calendar? Seeing none.
Just a quick
Oop.
comment. I did have 2 questions on claims, and it was answered to my satisfaction, and I really appreciate staff's time and expediency to turn up my questions around, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have several items on the consent calendar. Is there any public comment on the consent calendar?
President Seer, I do not have any.
Seeing none. All right, may I have a motion for adoption of the consent calendar?
So moved. Oh, second.
Moved and seconded. May we have a vote, please?
Director Gleason?
Yes.
Director Christine Tucker?
Yes.
Director Whipple?
Yes.
President Seer?
Yes.
And Director McNiven?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, now, then we go to item number 5, presentation by Heidelberg Materials, Lehigh Southwest Cement Company on actions of mutual interest regarding the Permanente Quarry. So General Manager's recommendation is to receive the presentation.
All right, good evening. Brian Malone, Assistant General Manager. And I'll do the staff presentation, and then we have staff from Heidelberg here tonight to go over their presentation. Staff presentation, Lehigh's presentation, board questions, and then following board questions, we'll have public comment. And then after public comment, if there's any follow-up board discussions for staff or for Lehigh, we can take those. All right, so I always like to start out just with pulling the most recent Google Earth image. So you can see this is the quarry. As might be obvious, this is the pit here in the middle. That's where most of the quarrying material came out of. That very steep north face wall. Sometimes we'll refer to the greenstone slide area. That's this greenish stone here that's not active right now, but did slide in the past. And then this is the West Materials storage area up in this area. And as you can see in the past several years, more material has been added on that. And then outside the reclamation area, but also of interest, and Lehigh will provide an update, is the former cement plant area over here. So that's just kind of a general orientation. This is the timeline. I'm not going to go through all of these, and I'm going to step through some of the history quickly, just as a reminder. But to jump forward to 2023, that's when Lehigh agreed with the county to permanently close the cement plant, and then submitted the reclamation plan amendment application to the county. In 2024, the county, on a separate project, certified the supplemental environmental impact report for Permanente Creek restoration. Just recently, Lehigh had the ribbon cutting for starting that work, and we'll get an update on how that work is going. A long-awaited project to restore Permanente Creek, which of course then flows through Rancho San Antonio County Park. And then in 2025, the county deemed the application complete after a couple back and forths to get more information included into the application. And the county anticipates certifying the supplemental environmental impact report at some point in 2026. So I didn't cover the earlier histories because I'm just going to quickly review some of our past, Mid-Penn's past history with the quarry. So many years ago, this corner here actually, before district ownership, actually fell into the quarry because the quarry walls were oversteepened. And in fact, before Heidelberg's ownership. And in 2006, we had a land exchange where we gave Lehigh this corner that I'm circling here and kept an easement on it so that if it was further eroded, there's payment penalties due to the district. So we gave this land to Lehigh, Heidelberg, and then this dark shaded land is what the district acquired, which was very helpful for the management of Rancho San Antonio. The former PG&E road, now the, I'm momentarily forgetting the name of a former Steve Average Trail. Thank you for the help from the audience. We are able to manage that entire trail now because the ownership is just outboard of that trail. And then the same thing with Montebello Road there. So that was a way of correcting a previous damage to what ended up being on district lands. And then, the reason we're here tonight at this annual meeting has to do with the 2012 Reclamation Plan Amendment, which is the current in effect reclamation plan. The district sued the county over the adequacy of the environmental impact report. And after there was a ruling in Lehigh's favor, we had discussions and ended up agreeing not to pursue an appeal of that ruling. And part of the agreement coming out of that was these two parcels. One was a 210 acre right of first refusal, and then 55 acre parcel that's really just conditional to make sure that the east material storage area didn't get any higher. There's just a trigger if the east material storage area was piled higher and that the Lehigh didn't lower it, then that parcel could go over to the open space district. And then a very important quarry trail easement, that is the current trail where there's a great view. Later on in the presentation, I have a picture of the west material storage area that you can see from that trail. And then also this easement in red, which we are in the beginning stages of assessing for a new trail on that alignment. But those rights were gained back in that agreement in 2014, having to do with the 2012 Reclamation Plan Amendment. And then this map, I really see as a success story for the district and the county working together. There was a 29 Reclamation Plan Amendment that was proposed, but then eventually withdrawn. The proposal included laying back mining material and also laying back the ridge line along this steep north face, and that would have further encroached into the ridgeline easement that the county holds. And as you remember, we entered into an agreement with the county to monitor that easement and that we have enforcement rights if there were further damage to that ridgeline in the area of the easement. So that brings us to the 2023 Reclamation Plan Amendment. I won't get into the details here. Lehigh staff can cover that. It is actually a pretty good map just to show one of the things that we're interested in, which is figuring out how to ensure that the pretty untouched open space that surrounds the quarry is preserved. It is crucial connection. Rancho San Antonio is kind of on a peninsula. for wildlife corridors and travel and habitat, but they do have this connection to wildland areas to get over to Piketty and Montebello through this existing land that Heidelberg owns. You'll see there's another quarry down here, the Stevens Creek Quarry, that is in this area, but there is a good surrounding swath of open space land that is certainly one of the open space district's interests to preserve in the future. And then just to get into some of our concerns with the 2023 Reclamation Plan amendment and associated activities. So mostly having to do with the WMSA, the West Materials Storage Area. One is the visibility. Even with reclamation, that would be a different contour and a different look than if you remove the entirety of the West Materials Storage Area. And then particularly, as we've learned, as we've monitored the ridgeline easement, and is evident that it's an extremely over-steepened wall and needs to be shored up, that there is potential of failure of the quarry walls unless they are shored up as quickly as possible. The quickest way to do that is to use as much of the West Materials Storage Area as possible to do that, and use that into the pit. Now, there are concerns over the use of the appropriate use of the West Materials Storage Area with selenium, and how much you can use in there without some additional risk because of you're disturbing the soils. So really in working with Lehigh and in analyzing the environmental impact report and the current plan and the impact report when it comes out, we would be looking at maximizing. So really trying to influence the process so that additional materials are not used to fill the pit, that all comes from any material that can be used from the West Material Storage is used in the pit to basically maximize that to the degree possible. The other aspect of that is long-term stability. The plan does, include removing portions of the West Materials Storage Area and lessening the steepness of those slopes. But we'd like to maximize that as well to leave us in the most stable long-term condition. And then, of course, as I mentioned, water quality protection is the other aspect that we're concerned about. And sometimes that might have trade-offs with how much of the West Material Storage Area can be used. It'll ultimately be the Regional Water Quality Control Board that determines what can go in the pit and what can be used in other aspects of the reclamation plan. We also are encouraging a revegetation plan that tries to get back to a natural environment more than the minimum requirements of the reclamation plan. I talked earlier about the restoration of Permanente Creek. That's, of course, an important component that is underway, so we will be watching that with interest. And I mentioned, again, the protection of open space land and wildlife connectivity. I have a slide later on to look at that. And then we always like to mention that eventually we would like to get public access from Stevens Creek Boulevard on into Rancho San Antonio as an alternate entry point. And there's possibilities with the Union Pacific tracks not having been used recently. We have heard in the past that Lehigh wants to reserve the use of those, but we would like to move forward as quickly as possible with access over the railroad tracks into Rancho. So this is a picture of the quarry walls, just to kind of give you a look at how steep they are. We have been actively monitoring. There are incipient cracks at the top and small slides. Fortunately, no major movement, nothing that we would consider a new violation of the ridgeline easement. This is an old picture. I just haven't been out. This is the view I was talking about from the quarry trail, looking down on the West Material Storage Area. It's actually quite a bit higher now, but this is what the top of the West Materials Storage Area looks like. You could actually see that from portions of Rancho San Antonio kind of peaking above the vegetated area. And then this is another angled view to try to give you a little bit of a more view of the dimensions rather than looking straight down on it. I think most of you have been out on the site just to see the enormity of how much material has been removed from the earth and how much has been placed in other areas. I mean, another thing to point out here is the stability of, of these steep slopes going down into Permanente Creek. And over here, that's where previously they had a slide into the creek that they then worked on, was a violation with the county, and then they worked on repairing. But obviously with the restoration of Permanente Creek, keeping additional sediment soils out of the creek is going to be a priority, and we want those to be as stable for the future as possible. This is our recommendation that we've made to Lehigh and hopefully will be addressed in the environmental impact report, is to, in addition to preserving these open space lands around the quarry, to create specific corridors through the reclamation area that are more intensively restored to provide good wildlife corridors through the quarry property. And also, they're quite likely there will be development or use potential for these quarry lands after reclamation. And that would also be the interest of these areas being preserved in the future to maintain linkages between these open space areas. And then this is just a picture to show you the ridgeline easement, because it's a little confusing to me sometimes, even though I've worked on this a lot, that the ridgeline easement is, currently hanging out in the air for portions of that. And that's kind of why we had the interest in working with the county to monitor and have the ability to enforce this easement. Because in the past, different board of supervisors than there is now, when that failed, there really was no enforcement action taken over that violation of the ridgeline easement. So we want to make sure in the future, if that happens, that we work with the county to make sure that a potential violation is enforced, and also emphasize through this process that it's pretty clear that the longer we go without buttressing those walls, the more possibility for a failure that would impact the ridgeline easement. So with that, I've completed my portion of the presentation. If there's any particular questions, I can take them now, but keep in mind that with Lehigh's presentation, they may answer some of the questions that you have coming up. All right. With that, I want to introduce Lehigh staff. Sanjeet, are you going to speak first? Okay. Sanjeet Sen. Okay, great. All right. And here we go. Let me just click through the slides there.
Did you have something like if you wanted to point to a
Yeah,
screen?
so this is, I don't know how well you were seeing it, but this is the,
That works.
yeah.
Perfect. Good evening. Glad to be back, and this is my third time presenting to you guys. I'm sure you've gotten sick and tired of hearing my voice, so we got another person with me this time, so all the tough questions can go to her. But again, thank you very much for the opportunity, for allowing us to present to you guys about the updates that we've been doing at Permanente Quarry over the last year, and then we've been going through this for the last couple of years, and really like to share and have the opportunity to speak to everyone and share what we have been working on. So as Brian pointed out, we've been working on 3 major projects, and we'll be talking about that today. From our perspective, the 3 big things that we've been looking at is reclamation plan amendment and future reclamation of the site, the Permanente Creek Restoration Project, and eventual cement plant demolition of the site. So given that, I'd like to introduce ourselves first real quick. My name is Sanjeet Sen. I'm the Senior Environmental Manager for Lehigh's Permanente Quarry. Been with the site now for 3 years. And prior to joining Lehigh, I have another 8 years of background in environmental consulting work,
So I've been doing this work for about 11 years, and my role and responsibility with Lehigh is to manage all the reclamation, restoration projects of the site. So I've been managing the reclamation and restoration stuff, along with all the environmental permitting and compliance requirements that we have at our site. The site's a very large site, as Brian pointed out, and there's any and every single rule that can apply to it. So with that, I'll hand it over to Morgan, and she'll introduce herself, and then we'll get started.
Hi, everyone. My name is Morgan Webster. I've been with the company for about 2 years now. With that being said, some of the responsibilities that I'm involved with involve just overall compliance, so things like reporting, testing, and then just general collaboration as well. To that end of things, I also went to San Jose State where I studied environmental science. So I am local. I grew up in the Bay Area as well. So I consider myself lucky to be a part of a huge project like this where reclamation is at the forefront. So it's been a huge learning opportunity for me, and I'm just grateful to be here today. So thank you guys for your time to collaborate.
So before we get started, and I wanted to give you all a brief history about who we are, and I know our site has gone through several transitions in terms of being Kaiser Permanente, then moving into Hansen, Lehigh Hansen, and now Heidelberg Materials. So question keeps coming around to us is, who are you? Are you Heidelberg? Are you Lehigh? So one of the things that we want to clarify today was, right now, our parent company is Heidelberg Materials. It's a German company based out of Germany, headquartered there, which is mainly into construction materials production. So we own aggregate quarries, predominantly limestone, as well as cement plants, as well as ready mix plants all across the globe, pretty much a global company with presence in Asia, Europe, the Americas. And in North America, our specific site are both considered to be subsidiaries of Heidelberg Materials. So from a legalistic standpoint, our company owner is Hansen Permanente Cement Inc. And the operator of the site, which is who we are and what we're doing as custodians of the site and doing all these projects like the rec plan and the Permanente Creek Restoration Project, is Lehigh Southwest Cement Company. So those are just basically from a legalistic standpoint who we are, but both companies are under the umbrella of Heidelberg Materials.
Alrighty, so just quick overview here for general plant updates. As you guys know, in 2020, the kiln idled due to COVID, economic, and market conditions. Come November 2020, Lehigh Southwest Cement Company announced that it would permanently shut down cement production. So then we go forward to 2023, where the initial reclamation plan amendment, or otherwise known as the RPA, was submitted to the County of Santa Clara Planning Department. Later on, it was resubmitted with additional information in June and December of 2024. Now, if we go ahead and fast forward to January 2025, the RPA was deemed administratively complete. And then in July of 2025, the California Environmental Quality Act processes for the RPA was initiated by the Santa Clara County. Other important updates that occurred in the last year, we began leasing the rock plant to Vulcan Materials, and so they are now responsible for the site's aggregates. In addition to that, we began year 1 of PCRP work, so that would be otherwise known as the Permanente Creek Restoration Plan. With that being said, in July of 2025, we also did begin pre-demolition assessments, which were conducted for the cement plant. So we hope to begin demolition of the cement plant sometime in the near future.
So that was a brief overview. Again, didn't want to go through too much details of the timeline, but majorly the updates from the last couple of years. We'll cover the 3 major projects that we are talking about, and wanted to start off with the reclamation plan amendment. So on Brian's presentation, we did have it called out as a 2023 rec plan amendment. That is originally when we had submitted the reclamation plan to the county for review. Subsequently, these were resubmitted in June of 2024 and December of 2024. The county had a couple of additional pieces of information that they requested, and hence there were 2 resubmittals done. Fast forward to January of 2025, the county deemed the application to be administratively complete. And then in June of 2025, they issued the notice of preparation to prepare a subsequent environmental impact report. Subsequent environmental impact report is slightly different to the supplemental environmental impact report that we did for the PCRP. But again, the intent is to study the new project with the additional environmental impacts associated with it. In August of 2025, the county, they formally began the CEQA procedure, and their lead consultant, which is ESA, began reviewing all the materials that have been submitted. They also started their technical studies and are studying some of the issues that we're talking about. That includes the aesthetics aspects to it, as well as water quality, stability, greenhouse gas and air quality, and the like. They're also determining a baseline on which these environmental impacts are going to be assessed. So currently we are in negotiations with the county, and we are working with them as they formalize the CEQA process and go through the environmental impact assessments. And as Brian mentioned earlier, they are planning to issue an EIR for review sometime in 2026. We also had the opportunity earlier this year in July, and thank you for Supervisor Abby Kogas and her team, to actually present at the annual town hall meeting for Lehigh's annual update with the county. In past years, we were not able to present, but it was a great opportunity for us this time to put forward some of the projects we're working on. And again, the intent for that meeting for us as well was to highlight the 3 major projects that we are working on, and we'll be talking about those today as well. Good.
Sorry, is it okay to ask questions now, or should we just hold until you're done?
I'm good either way, whatever
Okay.
you're comfortable with.
Then I'll fire away if you don't mind. Just for clarification, I'm having trouble kind of keeping separate the Permanente Creek restoration plan from the overall plan for the entire site. Just for clarity, how should we view those two? I mean, how do those work together, and how are you managing both of those?
That's a really good question, because there is certain aspects of Permanente Creek restoration plan. 90% of that project is actually a part of reclamation.
Okay.
So as you see Permanente Creek restoration project kind of being undertaken over the next 6 years, and we'll go into detail a little more as we go through the presentation. It's going to be a 6-year project where we're restoring about 1.5 miles, a little more than that, of Permanente Creek back to a more pre-disturbance condition and back to its natural conformity. Over decades, that creek was disturbed. 90% of that project is actually a part of our overall reclamation strategy. However, the reason why it is being separated right now, or being looked at from a separate standpoint, is because we're still going through a reclamation plan amendment, and overall reclamation for the site is something that will take a fairly good amount of time. You guys already know, we've talked about it. Whereas the creek restoration project can be accomplished in the next 5-6 years. And that's one of the reasons we did not want to delay that project, to be working in conjunction with when we start the actual reclamation of the site. So we decided to fast forward some of the Permanente Creek restoration work and complete that now as we go forward with our reclamation plan. There is a small section of the Permanente Creek restoration project that is outside the rec plan boundary, and we had to go get all the various permits, which Morgan will talk about in a bit, but those permits were achieved, including a grading permit from the County of Santa Clara. But yes, they are technically both under the same umbrella. We just, knowing the importance of the Permanente Creek restoration project, we have moved forward with the restoration of that now as we've gotten the opportunity to do so.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So going back to the reclamation plan amendment, and what is the reclamation plan? And that's one of the big questions that we keep asked, right? So what are we trying to address? We are trying to address final reclamation of the site. As Morgan mentioned, we shut down cement kiln operations in April of 2020, and then in November of 2022, we publicly announced that we have permanently shut down the kiln. And then in 2023, I believe it was in August, we signed a legally binding agreement with the county that the cement plant would no longer be operating. We are also right now, as Morgan mentioned, that we started doing pre-assessment surveys for the cement plant area before demolition, and we conducted those surveys and are hopeful that we will be able to submit demolition applications for the cement plant area later this year or potentially in 2026, but we're definitely moving forward with the intent of demolishing the cement plant. So keeping that in mind, again, there is no additional excavation of limestone from that quarry pit. We are not mining any new material from that pit. The only material that is currently getting processed, again, we have an agreement with Vulcan, who's partnering with us to process the already excavated remaining aggregate material. And once that material is processed, we no longer will be providing that material to the Bay Area market. And again, subsequently, the clinker production has stopped because we've permanently shut down the cement plant, are in a review for demolition. So reclamation in California is governed by SMERA, which stands for the Surface Mining and Reclamation Act. It was adopted in 1975. It requires any disturbed mine site to be reclaimed for future land use. In our 2023 rec plan amendment, we have proposed that the mine be restored to open space. So that is the main intent for the 2023-2024 rec plan. You'll hear me say 2023 or 2024 because we originally submitted in 2023, but then got formally adopted as or administratively accepted in 2024. So we go back and forth, but kind of around that time frame. So what are the main objectives of what we're going to be doing during reclamation? Our primary activities, again, we talked about it, as Brian alluded to. We'll be grading our slopes for stability. There's a geotech report that is amended to the reclamation plan, which kind of talks about how we're going to get it back to gentler slopes. We'll also be covering and capping those slopes with appropriate material, also revegetating it, letting it grow back to a revegetated condition. The quarry, you guys saw it, it was a pretty large pit. That's going to have to be backfilled with a combination of on-site material and imported fill. We actually are using 12 million cubic yards of material from WMSA that's going to be going into the pit. Total reclamation volumes we're talking about is about 40 million, so a good portion is still coming from the WMSA. And then of that 40 million, 15 million is what we need to buttress the high wall. So those are the volumes we're talking about, but we are still using a significant portion of the WMSA material that will be placed in the lower reaches of the quarry pit and done in accordance to the final closure plan model that we're working with the water board on. Covering the west material storage area, east material storage areas, and the quarry with suitable closure material. Again, this will be generated on site and imported from off site. It really depends on what the covering requirements are going to be, and then appropriate topsoil material so that vegetation can grow on the hills that are being capped and covered. We will be buttressing the quarry walls with imported fill. That again addresses north high wall concerns and being able to stabilize those steeper high walls. We'll continue to process the remaining aggregate stockpiles at the site with the help of Vulcan and supply it to the local market. And again, the ultimate aim is to revegetate it, to control all our material from being eroded by wind or water, and also assist in reclaiming the view sheds. Go ahead.
Great, thanks. Could you go back to do the, if you will, the math on the west material storage area? Because I think you quoted the total amount of material that is stored there now, and how, if I got that right, and how much is going to go into the pit versus how much is going to be used elsewhere. I'm just really interested in what's going to be left there. So could you do the numbers for me again?
I'd have to look at what I quoted was the amount of material that we are moving from the west material storage area into the pit, which is 12 million cubic yards
12.
or thereabouts.
Right.
And the total amount of volume that's going to be needed to backfill the pit and buttress the quarry walls is about 40 million, out of which 15 million is just for the buttress.
Got it.
So it's about 25 mil or thereabouts approximately to fill the pit to the base,
Right.
and then another 15 million to buttress the north high wall. So 12 million of the 25 is going to be coming from the west material storage area.
But But you don't, or no one knows how much material is at the West Material Storage Area?
We do. I don't have the exact number at the top of my head, but it's somewhere in the 30 million, 35 million range. I'd have to go back. Don't quote me on it. I'll have to
Yeah,
go back and look.
But still, that's so roughly a third of it
Yeah.
will be moved back in. Is that about the right?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe at some point, I'd like to talk more about, or maybe you'll present kind of what's going to happen to the West Material Storage Yard. And so how is that 1/3 going to be taken out? Is it, I mean, is the height going to come down? Is it going to be?
Yeah, so I can talk to it briefly right now. So our main objective is, again, it's going to be a combination. I think Brian was pointing it out when he had a figure open of some of the slopes that you wanted to avoid sediment control or erosion happening into Permanente Creek. Now, West Material Storage Area has been a waste management unit for decades, so there are certain creek-facing overburden material slopes that are placed pretty adjacent to the creek. And again, to his point, they do present potential concerns of sediment or runoff making it down into the creek. So the creek-facing slopes will be removed, put into the lower layers of the pit. Additionally, all of their slopes that are being left in place, they will be graded back to a 2:1 or 2.25:1 as proposed in the rec plan, so that they're much more gentler slopes, the ones that are remaining in place. They will be capped with the appropriate cover material. And again, cover material needs to meet certain requirements for it to not have the effects that we are concerned about from a water quality standpoint. So you got to have low permeability material, as well as then a layer of material that would promote vegetation growth. So that's your topsoil. So it would be capped, covered, kept in place with topsoil. Then with the appropriate plants and growing of native species, you would be revegetating those remaining hillsides to remain in place. And that was how the West Material Storage Area is going to pretty much look like.
I don't want to take us too far off, but at some point, could you address or readdress, why is it again that you can't use that $30 million in a West Material, 30 million cubic yards of West Material Storage into the 40 million needed for the pit?
It's mainly a water quality issue. So as you know, selenium is very naturally occurring in our area. We were a limestone quarry. Now, once you disturb selenium, once you disturb that material, its potential for it to leach selenium once it comes into contact with oxygen and water runoff is substantially higher. However, as material stays in place and remains undisturbed for decades, that material technically inactivates or turns off. So that is the intent, to not create a water quality issue for us. We're disturbing the areas that do need to be disturbed. The second aspect to it is also, we want to make sure that you don't have higher volumes of that material as we backfill, higher volumes of that selenium containing material at the top layers as we backfill, because then your chances of leaching and percolation of surface water going into groundwater, which then is directly adjacent to the creek. So the water is actually going to be making its way, because the water table is going to rise, the water is going to make it to the creek. It's going to create a selenium issue from a water quality standpoint. So we're trying to keep, the selenium has very strict water quality requirements. From a groundwater perspective, it's 50 micrograms per liter. From a surface water runoff perspective, it's only 5 micrograms per liter. So keeping those concepts in mind, we've been able to generate why we've come up with the plan that we've come up with. Okay, so that was kind of why we're doing the reclamation and what the objectives of the reclamation plan are. So now kind of moving into how are we achieving these objectives. First thing, as I think that is different from our 2019 rec plan, which you guys can see is a 30% reduction in our rec plan boundary. And that's because we have withdrawn with our 2023 rec plan any mining activity that would happen in the limestone reserves that were found in the south of Permanente Creek. So the 2023 plan claims that there will be no more mining in those southern reserves, and hence those areas will not be mined and can be removed from the reclamation plan boundary. Again, the 2012 rec plan is now a decade and a few years old. Since 2012, we've done several geotechnical studies at the site, including a lot of boring activity and just collecting a lot of data. All that geotechnical stability information has been incorporated into our new reclamation plan. Retaining the quarry north wall ridgeline, we talked about that in the presentation that Brian did earlier, and how we want to be able to retain that north wall ridgeline. And quite frankly, there are two options here in terms of stability for that north high wall. We can either potentially lay back the slope, and we know that was not a very popular choice back in 2019, and so we've decided to listen and keep the north high wall ridgeline, but then to be able to stabilize that long term, you are going to need to be able to backfill and buttress. So keeping the slope line in place, no layback of that north high wall, ensuring interim as well as long-term water quality and advanced closure plans pursuant to waste discharge requirements. Again, we're governed by Title 27 WDR requirements that are part of California's Code of Regulations. From the Water Board is the one who mainly administers those. Our West Material Storage Area, East Material Storage Area are both waste management units and have to comply with the requirements of these waste discharge requirements. And the quarry pit will eventually also become a waste management unit in terms of a Title 27 WDR. And that's kind of where, Kurt, I kind of talked about how we're going to maintain water quality with the movement of WMSA material. We'll also be covering EMSA, WMSA, quarry, and the quarry buttress fill with the appropriate cover. As we talked about, low permeability material as well as topsoil is required to accommodate those things so that eventually the vegetation takes at the site. It also provides for the import portion, it provides a home for other offsite regional projects that may be generating cut material and fill, which would then not have to be driven long distances, provides a pretty local area in the Bay market to fill a need within the Bay Area. And if your trucks are traveling less distances, you're producing less greenhouse gas emissions or air quality issues. We'll continue to process and sell the previously excavated aggregate with the help of Vulcan. And then again, we complete our reclamation in phases. It is expected to be a 35 to 40-year process. And the last portion of that is, of course, buttressing the north high wall and getting to final reclamation. So that's kind of where we're at with the reclamation plan. Again, studying it with the county as we go through CEQA, and we'll keep working and hopefully have approved SEIR next year.
Yeah. If you could help us again with the timeline this time. How long will it take you to sell all of the available aggregate? Is that like a 30 to 40-year time frame as well? So you're basically still going to be in the aggregate business for how long?
I don't think we're going to be in the aggregate business for 35 to 40 years. We only have a very limited stockpile of aggregate remaining at site. I don't foresee that going on for 35 to 40 years. It's very difficult to tell exactly how much it's going to be right now, but I don't foresee it going on for that long. The main intent for reclamation, and as you see the phases, you're actually going to be reclaiming West WMSA, EMSA, and certain other areas within the first 10 to 15 years of this reclamation plan. What's really going to take time and extends the project out is the backfill first, but then again, buttressing that north high wall, because that needs to be buttressed and stabilized. And it's a pretty large high wall. You need a lot of material to be able to buttress that. So that's what's going to take a majority of the latter half of the reclamation process.
Okay. And, we've talked a lot about truck trips, to bringing in material. And I guess a couple questions. There's also going to be a lot of truck trips, if you will, for the material to cover the West Material Storage Area, right? I mean, is that part of the calculation? Because you're going to have to bring in material.
Yeah,
to feel that, right? Is that?
And that we have acknowledged that there will be a need for import of material to be able to cap and cover, as well as to backfill.
Okay.
Because again, primarily it's three reasons. First, we talked about the water quality objectives and the issues with that.
Right.
The other two issues is this plant has been operating since the 1930s. We have records of activity going on prior to that. So it
Right.
was a mass producing facility for close to 90 years. And it's
Yep.
fairly simple mass balance where what goes out must also come in to fill the hole.
Right.
So we've generated cement and aggregates for the Bay Area for several projects, SJC, a lot of the highways were built with our material, but there is just not enough material on site to be able to
Right.
reclaim it. And then again, it's not just the volume, it's the type of material.
Right.
So if you want to be able to cap, cover, and revegetate,
Right.
you need topsoil.
Right.
Topsoil eroded in the 1930s doesn't exist today at the site.
Right,
When
right.
there was no SMARA standards or there were no environmental laws back then that you had to preserve topsoil for 90 years somewhere. So there is going to be a need for that.
Right.
We do expect truck traffic to be kind of commiserate with what we've seen in the past when there was some amount of operations of the site, but nothing substantially over that. Additionally, we have also, as Brian pointed out, that we are retaining the ability to use the rail line to be able to import some of that material to alleviate some of the truck traffic on the street. So that's
Wow.
kind of where we're at.
That's interesting. So you don't foresee a greater amount of truck traffic than what that operation has seen historically? Because I think I saw something like 600 a day.
Yeah,
Is that what's going
I've seen
on?
that number, 600 a day. It's a very interesting way if you perceive it. So the way the calculations work is when they say 600 a day, they're thinking of the trip as a one-way trip into the plant, and then any truck that's going to go into the plant also has to come out. So it's actually technically only 300 trucks on the road. It's not 600. So we expect it's going to be about at 300. On a good full day would be
Yeah.
about 300 trucks.
Right.
But
Right,
again,
right.
that's going to ebb and flow and also have the option of potential rail use to alleviate some of that.
I have one last question associated with that. That's okay. So this is going to sound incredibly naive, and I'm sorry if but I'm just thinking that there's probably going to be a lot of demand around the Bay Area for fill, because I'm just thinking about, for example, sea level rise and the retaining walls and so on that are going. So do you have to pay for the material to come in, or do they pay you to dump the material? How does the economics work there?
That's kind of something that I'm not well versed with. We have very specific site-specific criteria that the fill has to meet a certain specificity that's going to be defined in accordance with the California Code of Regulations. So material is going to have to meet those specs for us to be able to import and use it for our appropriate reclamation. What that's going to look like is something that we're still working on, and I just don't have an answer for you.
So, but even whether you have to pay for it or whether they're going to pay you, you don't know that yet. Is that right?
I mean, if it's something that we need to get and we need to pay for it, we'll need to pay for it. That's there's not much more to.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mhm. So that's the reclamation. I'm going to hand it over to Morgan, so she'll handle the creek restoration, and then we'll get. Oh, go ahead.
So I'm just following up on some of the questions that Director Riffle asked. I'm still a little bit confused. So I hear the current proposed reclamation plan is using the 12 million cubic yards from the WMSA. There's a lot more material there, and I hear Midpen encouraging looking at using more of that material. And I'm still trying to understand, I mean, you're citing environmental reasons for not using that material, but my experience is Midpen also cares a lot about the environment. So I'm trying to understand this difference, the difference in these proposals, and how to sort out what is really the best thing to do here. Because, I'm new to this also. The idea of bringing in a giant amount of material when there already is some material there, and we have people encouraging to use that material, seems a little odd, right?
Yeah, no, and we we deeply value Midpen's thoughts on it and acknowledge that you guys have been custodians of the environment and have looked at it and studied it very carefully. So it's really, there is no one blanket true answer that everything is environmentally. We have to look at it from a holistic standpoint. I think some of the ideas that you guys have talked about again, and your main concerns are, again, creating ecological corridors, the aesthetics issue, again, with the West Material Storage Area. But those aren't the only environmental issues that are evaluated during the CEQA process. And that's really the intent of this CEQA process that the county is the lead agency for, and all the other agencies that are experts in their specific areas evaluate. They have to evaluate it from many different avenues, right? They got to evaluate it from an air quality standpoint, greenhouse gas emissions, or we have net CO2 objectives that we want to meet. Water quality, as I said, that is really the main driver. And projects can be counterproductive. Today, if we create a situation where there is selenium leaching out into a creek that has just been restored in perpetuity and affecting some of the creek-bearing species in there, then the project again is in conflict with each other. So the intent of CEQA and going through this whole CEQA process is to review the project as a whole and have all these different environmental issues that are all very important issues and all important to analyze, but then coming to a good base where everything isn't evaluated and mitigated as appropriate. So that's where I think there are maybe a couple of things that are viewed that are probably more important from an aesthetic standpoint that that is something that Midpen is really interested in, but we have to look at it from a holistic standpoint. And that's where the environmental impact review, which again, is being evaluated right now by the county and all the other agencies, and we'll have an appropriate EIR for it. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Morgan for the creek restoration update.
Okay, so thank you, Sanjeet, for debriefing the RPA for us. I'm going to go ahead and try to touch base on the PCRP. So again, that'll be the Permanente Creek Restoration Project. So basically, this is broken down into multiple phases. Year one activities included pre-construction surveys for sensitive species. For instance, we do have red-legged frogs on site, and those are one of our California protected species. In addition to that, we do mobilization of work. So then we fast forward to August 2025. That's when construction began. So before the work started, Lehigh Southwest Cement Company obtained approvals from all the necessary agents and agencies such as the Santa Clara County, the United States Fish and Wildlife Services, the United States Army Corps of Engineers, the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board, and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. So after the approvals and permits were obtained, there was a ribbon cutting ceremony that occurred to mark the beginning of construction. So it was a well-attended event. We are lucky enough to have even a few Midpen representatives there, such as Jane Mark and Anna Maria Ruiz. They were also present. So with that being said, we want to take a quick look here at some of the photos we have on display. So let me see here. Okay, so anyways, I can't figure out the laser pointer, but I can just describe them verbally. Up top here, we do have a picture of what the existing conditions looked like before we started construction. So with that being said, we did have steeper slopes. Excuse me. Oh, you did it with the mouse. Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so now that I have the laser pointer figured out, so this picture up top here, this is what our conditions looked like prior to construction. So as you can see here, there's a concrete road. So we did want to remove that, and we did have steeper slopes here. So with steeper slopes, you do see more erosion, which is something you wouldn't want to be looking for when you're right on the bed of the creek. So our idea was to widen the creek beds, which is what we have pictured down here. We also do have a narrower dirt road. So this again will be more representative of natural conditions. And then we did widen the creek bed, like I said. So with a wider creek bed, we were able to implement more vegetation. And so with revegetation, we're able to see more canopy cover, which is particularly useful when we're wanting to keep cooler climates for some of the aquatic species that are living in this creek bed. Okay. Moving on here to our next slide. So we do have this is kind of a bird's eye view of the plant. So up top here, you can see this blue line that represents the Permanente Creek. As you come down the creek, you can see a few different green areas highlighted. And so these green areas are going to be the creek restoration areas. So as Sanjeet mentioned earlier, this is going to stretch for about 1.5 miles of total creek restoration. Currently in phase 1, which has been this past year of work, we've been working in the lower stretches of the creek. As we continue into phases, so we're going to be doing phase 1 through 6. As we continue into later phases, we're going to start working higher up in the creek bed over here. Alrighty, so other topics of interest that we have here at Lehigh Southwest Cement Company. So one of the things that we did mention earlier is the wildlife connectivity routes. So the RPA indicates that connectivity routes will be further evaluated in hopes to create wildlife corridors, which would allow animals to move in between areas for food, shelter, and breeding, which would ultimately and thereby maintain biodiversity. In addition to that, and regarding undeveloped parcels, Lehigh Southwest Cement Company will continue to work with neighbors and stakeholders in the area regarding any future land use of the site. So this will be our conclusion, and I'll let Sanjeet take over for wrapping things up for us. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, so we always like to conclude with our commitments to not only our side, but to all the various stakeholders, as well as what are the next steps as we look forward to 2026. So first and foremost, our priority as a construction materials business, we will continue to operate the plant and all the projects that we have at the site in compliance with all applicable laws and permits. Safety is a top priority for us. So, and we will be working through all the projects, whether it be reclamation, restoration, or any other environmental projects that we do on the site. We also intend to listen to our community, including Midpen and all other various stakeholders on future plans for Permanente property. Like I mentioned earlier, right now our focus has been on the top 3 projects for our site, which is the reclamation plan amendment, the creek restoration, and eventual demolition of the cement plant. We will, however, in the upcoming months, begin listening sessions to hear feedback from the community, as well as important stakeholders like Midpen, Sierra Club, et cetera, to hear their thoughts on the site. And again, we will be putting out information as we begin those listening sessions at the site. Additionally, in terms of next steps, we will continue to work with the county and all the other agencies associated with the reclamation plan process and push the CEQA process forward as we try to accomplish the environmental impact review and then subsequent approval of the reclamation plan, and then actually moving into reclamation. The timelines currently proposed are very are optimistic, and we would, as just like you guys, would like to start reclamation sooner rather than later. We will also continue our construction with the creek restoration project. We have about another week of in-creek work for this year, but the project is a 6-year project, and we're already starting to make plans for year 2, which begins in 2026. So we'll continue to work on this project and move it forward along. Continue to have dialogue with Midpen in these meetings and other Midpen staff as we talk to them about topics of mutual interest that we keep talking about and y'all are well aware of. And also continue working on our plans for the demolition of the cement plant. As I mentioned earlier, we started with the pre-demolition surveys of the site, which just got completed in the July-August timeframe. Now we're going to be working closely with the county to develop our demolition applications for the cement plant, which we hope to submit in the very near future. So with that, those are basically the updates we have for our site. Lots of things moving over the past year, and as we look forward to the next 3 to 5 years, there will still be a lot of work to be done as we kind of get these projects to see the day of light. And again, the way I like to end it is this is an opportunity. This has been a site that's, again, near and dear to our heart. I'm a Santa Clara County resident. can't afford Los Altos, but live in San Jose. These are projects that are near and dear to me as well. And again, it's a site that's been developed for decades with the mining activities closing in on 100 years. It's an opportunity to reclaim it. It's an opportunity to do it right for future generations. So it may take a little bit of time, but we want to do it right so that it doesn't create problems in the future. So with that, I think we will conclude our presentation from our side for this year. Happy to take any more questions if you have, or well, thank you again for the opportunity and would look forward to talking to you all again in the future.
No, I don't have a question. I just have a more of a logistics or a procedural. If there's an opportunity to hear from the public, that'd be great if there's anyone. But also to hear from our staff, that if there's any questions from staff, is that possible tonight too?
It's an information gathering
Yeah,
opportunity. So,
great. Okay.
so let's start over here.
Are we taking public comment on this?
We will get that. You want to go first and then come back to the board?
I'm interested in hearing.
Okay, let's do that. If you have a public comment, if you fill out the card, that would be wonderful.
While they're doing that, I do want to really thank Sanjeet and Morgan for being here tonight. So thank you for the information. It's really helpful.
Excuse me. Okay, Kit Gordon. Thank you for your patience, by the way.
Hi, I'm Kit Gordon, resident. Permanente Creek is part of the Stevens Creek watershed. Stevens Creek is one of the last steelhead streams in our county. And I know one of the original intents from the Sierra Club lawsuit and consent decree was that Permanente Creek on Lehigh property would be passable to fish. Do you know if in your creek restoration plan, it will be fish, steelhead passable?
And we could take public comment, and then if the board wants to direct any questions to staff or Lehigh, we can do that after.
Okay.
For me, there's no other public comments.
Sanji, do you want to speak directly to that question about fish passage?
So yeah, that's a question that we keep getting very often. Is the work that you're doing, is that going to be fish passable? The answer is we're creating the conditions for it to be fish passable on our site. We have the restoration project is meant to go over 1.5 miles in through our property. And again, as Morgan mentioned, we're creating all the conditions for the fish to come back, whether that's increased canopy cover so that we can reduce the temperatures of the water. We're widening the channel in areas where it was displaced or culverted, removing all the man-made infrastructure that's a part of the process. Again, widening up the floodplain benches, giving the stream an opportunity to meander, just finding its natural flow, and that's the very intent. So we are creating all the conditions, cannot control what happens outside our property. There are other barriers. As you've seen, Permanente Creek not only passes through our property, goes pretty far down into the bay. So we can't control some of those things, but from our standpoint, we're creating the conditions. If the fish come back, great. That's our intent. So that's what I can say.
Okay, any other public comment? Hearing none, any comment from the board?
Well, just if I may kind of address some of the questions that came up that were discussed with the Heidelberg staff. So, the it's a pretty, and I wouldn't say the main concern from the, board, we're representing you when we provide comment letters, is aesthetic. It's more landscape health. And very clearly for restoration, without factoring in the selenium factors, just putting it back in the pit is clearly superior. So what is difficult is the technical aspect of when you move material, what does that activate? What does that provide the possibility of leaching? So we will be hiring consultants through this environmental review process. The county's going to be looking at it, but we will also be hiring consultants to take a separate look from an environmental perspective to see how we can balance those to come up with the best environmental alternative that meets the reclamation goals. So, I mean, it is not an easy question, and there's a lot of technical aspects of it, and we will need to hire additional expertise to take a look at that to see how we can make recommendations to maximize it and at the same time ensure water quality. But it's almost assured that there will need to be ongoing water quality monitoring in treatment. Currently they have a treatment plant on site. And then to address the fill availability, just looking at it as part of this project, it's a market, right? So there are certainly times where you are paying for fill, and there are times where you're paying to get rid of fill. And sometimes you're just paying for transport from someone that wants to get rid of fill. And the requirements from the Regional Quality Control Board are going to factor into that as well as, and that is one of the things that we asked in a letter to the county to address in the completeness of the application, and the county's response to Lehigh was that should be addressed, the Mid-Penn's concern should be addressed in the environmental impact report as far as the market, because there is so much fill that's needed for the shoreline levees and restoration. If you've been to the South Bay, you can see the enormity of the levees that are going in there, and there were in the planning stages for levees in the kind of Palo Alto, East Palo Alto region, affecting our Ravenswood Open Space Preserve. So both on the kind of, and you would expect a company to make market decisions about that. So say if fill was very expensive, to wait, as we would be encouraging them to fill and buttress as quickly as possible, because as I mentioned, there is that risk with that high wall, with it not being supported, that it could collapse, and that would kind of make the choice for you that you would have to lay it back, because it would probably be impossible to rebuild at that point. So that's our next steps, is to work to ensure that this environmental impact study is in depth and considers all the proper elements. And a large part of it will be technical, and I don't think we can say for sure what the outcome will be, but we will continue to work with Lehigh and the county as it moves forward.
Thank you.
Can I ask Brian a question?
Yes.
Brian, what do you foresee then the impact to Rancho San Antonio as far as our visitors, over this next, because right now, gosh, nothing's except for the creek restoration that's happening, which I don't think is going to impact our visitors much at all. But is there anything that we need to be getting ready for or preparing for?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I think the creek restoration, one thing that you don't notice unless you're there daily, is that right now the creek does turn on and off, because they are storing water and then treating it and then releasing it, and kind of not in necessarily a natural cycle. So I think that is, whether it impacts visitors or not, but it's impacting the park, right, and our resources. So that will hopefully change over time. It might take full reclamation before you get back to normal water flows, and even to get the pit to the top of the water table before you're getting at the maximum amount of flow in the creek, because obviously if, it's a little bit of an unnatural situation to have a creek up here and then, have the ground go down from there, right? Which it goes down into the pit,
Right.
and that does drain water away.
Right.
There is the visual impact of the West Materials storage area that will be minimized, and I don't have enough detail. I mean, that's a question we could ask of whether that will be lowered enough to go below. I don't know how much they're looking at lowering the elevation. I think they're more looking at the making the grades acceptable for soil retention.
Right.
And then, of course, the truck traffic will be an impact to the neighbors and our visitors as they're coming in. And obviously, they're utilizing the maximum amount of on-site soil will lessen the amount of truck trips.
Mhm.
I guess the rail, I don't see too many possibilities. I know in earlier conversations I had with different staff with Lehigh, but they said the only way rail shipments would make sense is if something's coming from well out of the area. Anything that would be local would have to be shipped via truck to offloading point and then go on the rail. So if you're coming from far away, yes, that could make a difference. Which is preferable, right? You're locally sourcing fill either on site or from local construction projects. Trucking is probably going to be your best way. So I would still want to encourage the possibility of having a trail access sooner rather than later.
Right, right.
But again, that's our perspective, and we will work through the environmental review process.
Thank you, everyone. You have another one?
Yeah, there's a question about the number of truck trips and the 300 versus 600. So
that's a standard terminology that you use. A trip is one
way
trip. Yeah. So like we use this all the time when we're looking at road agreements. A standard residence is 10 trips a day, which means 5 round trips.
Okay.
So that's accurate in that. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if I don't remember if it's made clear in the places where we've written it down, but I think that is actually something that could be easily misunderstood.
Yeah.
Right. Because if somebody says, I think I misunderstood it as 600 round trip. So
yeah,
I think it might be good for us to clarify.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. That's the standard terminology for it, but maybe not the typical layman's way of describing a truck trip.
Yeah, sure.
I would just suggest that when that comes up, that it can just be defined in the text right as we go along. Go ahead. Another?
Yeah. So I think what we heard was that the current reclamation plan would use about 12 million cubic yards from the WMSA, and that there's roughly 35 million there total. Is the sense that it might be all usable for fill, or is there some other number that say Midpen might have in mind?
So if it's feasible, yeah, we would want it all, because just on a landscape scale, that's the preferable way to do it. But I mean, understanding that, you require testing and you want to see, and ultimately, if the Regional Water Quality Control Board says that you can't use it at this level, that's going to be the ultimate arbiter of whether it's appropriate to use. It was good to hear from them that, they're not going to allow construction debris and that sort of thing at the supervisors meeting.
Thanks.
Okay. We don't have any more from the audience, and there's no vote required on this presentation. So what I'd like to suggest, since we've been at it for an hour and a half, is that we take a 5-minute break and then do the presentation on item number 6. Is that right? Okay. Break now. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it very much. Fantastic. Thank you. Come back to order. And we have a presentation on agenda item number 5, the Visitor Services Youth Partnership Program.
Excellent. Yep. Yeah, presentation mode. Good evening, Board of Directors. My name is Ellen Chesfold, the Interpretation and Education Program Manager, and I'm here with Jeff Butterworth, who will come up in a minute. He's the Environmental Education Specialist, and we're going to share a presentation about the Youth Partnership Program. The Youth Partnership Program is housed in the Visitor Services Department and within the Interpretation and Education Program. So tonight we're sharing with you the youth partnerships that we have connected with since 2023, which is the last time we presented to the board about this program. We'll talk about the program itself, its goals, and highlight each youth-focused partner. We'll have some time at the end to answer any questions that may arise. And there's no board action required, but this is informational and hopefully enjoyable to hear about some of the impactful connections youth have with nature. So since 2023, Interpretation and Education, we call it I&E, program staff have worked with ongoing and new youth partnerships with youth-focused organizations. So in addition to the 3 I&E staff, there are incredible volunteer docents who support and lead the programs. And before we start talking about the Youth Partnership Program itself, I want to highlight our regularly scheduled programming, which includes staff and docents who lead the Spaces and Species field trip at Skyline Ridge, tabling events, classroom visits, community presentations, docent naturalists who lead hikes for family-focused events, and nature center docents who host the Daniels Nature Center at Skyline Ridge Preserve. So this is all the internal I&E programming that we already do and will continue to share with the public. With the hiring of the environmental education specialist position, we were able to think about connecting and expanding our programming with youth-focused partners. So the goals of the Youth Partnership Program are to develop positive relationships with youth-serving organizations and to sustainably grow the impact of youth programs. And these all ultimately connect with MidPenn's mission of providing ecologically sensitive enjoyment and education. So this can look like leading our own programs in MidPenn preserves and also supporting partners in their own youth programming. When I&E staff look at who we want to partner with, we always consider a balance. For example, we are balancing geographically, so partners on the bay side and on the coast side, We balance age groups of who we're serving. We have a particular interest in serving middle and high school students. That age range tends to not have as many opportunities for field trips in some instances. And we also try to prioritize youth engagement with communities with historically limited access to parks and open spaces. So to make some of these programs possible, the INE staff, we have a budget of $10,000 per fiscal year. This helps support some of these youth partners. That's a special budget in the INE program. Some of our youth partnerships don't have this financial component and is more mid-pen capacity and staff or docent capacity to support these programs. Okay, so I will pass it on to Jeff to start highlighting our youth partners.
Thank you so much, Ellen. Good evening, Board of Directors. I'm Jeff Butterworth. I'm the Environmental Education Specialist, and it's really a privilege to be able to talk about our youth partners and who we've connected with since 2023. So the first group I'd like to highlight is the organization Canopy, and specifically their Teen Urban Foresters program. So the Teen Urban Forester program is a paid internship with students from high schools in East Palo Alto area, and they help Canopy achieve its mission to collaborate with communities to grow and sustain equitable urban forests for all. So beyond learning marketable skills and gaining job experience, the Teen Urban Foresters work together to improve their neighborhoods in tangible ways. They build local pride and contribute to the economic and civic flourishing of their communities by bringing the life-giving benefits of trees to local schools, parks, and neighborhoods. So to date, we have hosted 2 Career Day events here at the administrative office with 2 different cohorts of the Teen Urban Foresters. This photo that you see here was captured of the entire group at the end of our last event, which occurred in May. And these have been really fantastic opportunities to learn more about these youth, really what they're interested in, what brought them into the program. And I want to take a moment just to read a thank you letter that we received after our first Career Day event. It says, "Thank you, Jeff and the Midpen team for hosting our Teen Urban Foresters. They truly had a blast hearing from the various speakers and their roles. We usually have a small huddle after every session, and all the toughs shared a similar takeaway, which was don't give up and trust the process. Many of them are applying for colleges, so having Midpen staff share that it's okay not to know and to try new things was comforting. If at any time there's something we can do in support of you or your work, let us know." So that was a great just kind of boost of confidence to receive after the event. And these events, you know, they're really, a big focus of them is on reflection and connection. So it's not just a dry recitation of our roles and responsibilities as district staff members. Midpen staff shared really heartfelt stories about their career trajectories, how they ended up working for the district, and what their day-to-day and week-to-week duties might look like in their roles. And at the conclusion of our most recent event in May, we actually had one of the toughs approach and ask, you know, how can I get involved with Midpen this summer? Unfortunately, we don't have high school opportunities just yet, internship opportunities, but there's volunteer opportunities and things of that like. So felt like another success. The next partner I want to highlight is Climate Resilient Communities. So this year, we provided $2,300 in financial assistance to this organization, specifically in support of their youth-oriented initiatives with local communities. They have a program called the Youth Climate Collective Program. And so that program, what it does is it serves an educational initiative that encourages the engagement and leadership of young individuals. This is like from teenage to young adults in matters of climate justice and environmental topics in the Greater Peninsula region. So that money was to support the operation of that program for this past fiscal year. The next partnership I want to highlight was a really, really fun opportunity we got to work with the Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action Network. SVYCA is a youth-led nonprofit that empowers teens and young adults to combat climate change through impactful policy and education initiatives. And for this specific program, they had roughly 40 high school students participating in a summer climate leadership academy. The goal of that academy was to support climate literacy and help connect these young people with local organizations and agencies and policymakers that play an active role in mitigating climate impacts here in the Bay Area. So that included Midpen. We partnered with Santa Clara Open Space Authority for a dual presentation. We did an in-class session that culminated in a town hall style activity where the student groups got assigned unique stakeholder roles, and they were tasked to develop their own creative nature-based solutions to develop a solution for a city facing extreme heat-related impacts. So it was really cool to see those young minds come together and think creatively with the support of these environmental professionals there to sort of aid them in their thinking and to see those ideas that they came up with. After that day in the classroom, the following day, the students took a field trip to Coyote Valley, as well as the Cathedral Oak site in Sierra Azul, where staff shared insights on different restoration efforts, climate resilience, and different opportunities that they could partake in for continued involvement in those efforts. The next partnership I'd like to highlight is with the San Mateo County Department of Sustainability, their Youth Exploring Climate Science Program, or YEX for short. We signed an MOU with the County Department of Sustainability in 2024 that made Skyline Ridge Open Space the destination for a co-led field trip that's focused on understanding wildfire management and climate change impacts in San Mateo County. So the photos that you see here were actually they're featured on their website, but they're pulled from a YEX field trip that we led with 7th graders from Connect Community Charter in North Fair Oaks. So what these field trips are really about, the students, they receive a relevant pre-trip lesson on climate science and a brief history of fire in California. Then they get to come to Skyline Ridge, where they're taken on a walk with myself and a co-docent to explore and experience Midpen's ecologically sensitive vegetation management efforts. And they learn about how reduced fuel loads help mitigate catastrophic wildland fire. Additionally, the students are learning about all the different careers and the various agencies that were involved in our wildfire resiliency efforts. So there's that kind of workforce development component as well. And so our next YEX field trip is scheduled for November, and I'm really looking forward to that. Save the Redwoods League. So since 1918, Save the Redwoods League, or SRL for short, they've been protecting and restoring California's redwood forests and connecting people with the peace and beauty of those national treasures. And we've been partnering with them on a field trip called the Redwoods and Climate Change Field Trip that's held at Lower Parisma Creek Open Space Preserve. And the purpose of that trip is to provide the high school students a really local ecological context for climate change. It's not just an issue occurring somewhere else, it's right here in our own backyard. And so we collect the same kind of data using similar tools that the Save the Redwoods League researchers do to study how coastal redwoods are responding to the challenges of climate change. And so what you see pictured here on the left is a group deciding which tree to measure in order to estimate the amount of carbon that it stores. And then pictured on the right is a group recording measures of the health of a sword fern. So sword ferns are an important drought indicator species in the redwood forests. The next partner I want to highlight is the Sienna Youth Center. The Sienna Youth Center is a nonprofit organization serving the North Fair Oaks community in Redwood City. They provide after-school care, summer programming, and leadership mentoring opportunities. This linguistically diverse community has many neighborhoods that have limited access to park and open space. So since 2013, we've led 16 summertime field trips for their participants. And those young people have ranged in age from 7 all the way up to 17 years old. The photo you see on the left is from our most recent summer, this past summer at El Corte de Madera Creek Open Space Preserve. And the photo on the right is from past summers at Skyline Ridge Open Space Preserve. want to highlight just a quote that was really touching that we got from the former assistant director for the Siena Youth Center after he had brought groups of students up for a summer from his program. He said, quote, "The most impactful part of the program was seeing the kids become curious rather than remaining afraid of nature. Through the activities, the interactive items, and Rolo at the Nature Center," Rolo's our gopher snake, Pacific gopher snake, "the kids' apprehensions and negative presumptions of nature and wildlife shifted, e.g. that nature and wildlife are dangerous or to be stayed away from and only observed from behind glass. The hikes were equally engaging for the kids. It was heartwarming to hear them ask to return to Skyline Ridge to go on new hikes. It's evident that a seed of love of the outdoors was planted in our kids this summer." And for our last partner, I'm going to pass it back to Ellen, who's going to share a little bit more.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Youth and Young Adult Outdoor Education Yaya, I think is a great name. It's a week-long overnight camp in San Gregorio. They're very new. They piloted 5 full weeks of camp this last summer. The program empowers youth through outdoor education and wellness programs. So this summer, Midpen contributed money that went towards startup materials for their program, mainly being an iPad for the Students Advocacy Project. That's a project that involves students documenting their week-long program into forms of PowerPoint or podcast or videos. So we're excited to see how Yaya grows in connecting youth with the coast side through these experiences. Looking ahead at the Youth Partnership Program, there are some potential challenges to consider, but a lot of possibility and potential. So one challenge is Midpen staff and docent capacity. Our impact really is increased when we can support organizations who are serving youth in programming not specifically led by us, but supporting the partnerships who are doing that work. Another challenge is staff turnover with our youth partners. We've had to connect with new staff as they are hired, but that just takes a little bit of time, but it's been smooth transition so far. We will continue to maintain our current youth partners and then also look for exploring new partnerships as feasible with these considerations in mind. So, but ultimately we see so much possibility with the Youth Partnership Program. And, you know, Jeff and I always think about the youth, the people who we're serving, and how to adapt program, how to serve them, what they're interested and excited in learning about. As Richard Louv noted, all children need nature, not just the ones whose parents appreciate nature, not only those children of a certain economic class or culture or set of abilities, every child. So everyone benefits from spending time outside, and as staff and docents, we're really proud to provide those opportunities so that they can connect with nature and themselves. We always say that, you know, the youth are the future stewards of the land, but I think they're also the current stewards of the land, and we see that when we see the students connecting with nature, appreciating it, and already taking part in protecting it. So the Youth Partnership Program really encourages these future generations to connect with nature and continue to protect it. So thank you. And with that, we have some time for questions, if any arise. So.
Thank you very much. I loved reading about these programs, and I really appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
So I guess one specific thing I was wondering about was with the teen urban foresters. One of the really impactful field trips that we had was the visit to Lahonda Creek to see the forestry project, forest health project. Is that something that they might have the opportunity to do? I assume some of the people involved have probably already spoken to them, but that was something where I also saw, we went on a hike there with the Bay Area Ridge Trail folks afterwards. And, you know, they were particularly interested in that part of the preserve and understanding what was going on there.
Yeah, I definitely see that connection. They have visited our nature center, and I think they were looking into getting some vans or some transportation for that group. Like Jeff said, we've done the career days, but we can certainly connect with them and see if they would be interested in kind of like a field visit. So I'll make note of that.
And then I'm wondering, just in general, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just
Go
gonna,
ahead.
I was just gonna add that as I understand the program as they participate in it, they are doing sort of field-based visits with other environmental organizations. And so it would be getting in early enough with their current program coordinator to try and schedule something on Mid-Penn land. So if we were able to coordinate things amongst staff, I could see that as a real possibility, getting out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in general, your ability to grow these programs, because I think the potential is huge. And, you know, getting kids while they're young and you can get them interested in nature will have a huge impact in the future. But what are the limitations? You have staff bandwidth and docent bandwidth, and what stands in the way of doing bigger things?
Yeah, I think it's those things like we're a team of 3, and then it's kind of Jeff and I mainly focusing on these, and then coordination for docents takes time as well too, and training docents, and so I think it's potential of maybe having some interns in the INE program. We've been kind of exploring that, but it really is just like capacity for staff, I think.
And I'm wondering, are these for an individual child who's going through one of these programs? I guess you just spoke to part of this with the Teen Urban Foresters, that they're going through a program that takes them maybe to many different places. But in other cases, is it sort of a one-shot thing where maybe a given student will get one of these field trips, or are they is there sort of a repeat or multiple opportunities, say, for us to speak to them?
Yeah, I think especially for Sienna Youth Center, that's our longest partner, I would say, or one of our longest partners that we've had field trips directly provided for them by staff and docents. And we actually, one of the reasons why we switched up our preserves, we did 2 summers at Skyline Ridge Preserve, and then the 3rd year we switched it up to El Corte de Madera Creek Preserve because we had recurring students. So like, oh, we know Rollo already. we know the Nature Center, these trails. So it was kind of cool to see the repeat students and to build that connections with them. So I was talking about balance of experiences. I think that's important to have those first time visitors, youth coming to our preserves, as well as those deeper connections and partnerships. Yeah,
that's great. Thank you very much.
I'll just comment on what a great program you have. I happened to be hiking on Russian Ridge the other day, and there was Jeff doing his thing, and it was wonderful to watch. Actually, you were organizing bathroom break. But you did a good job.
Thank you.
So thank you for the way you do your program. It's really good.
Thank you for your support.
I really don't have too many additional questions. I think Craig actually asked a lot of the questions that I had. But first, thank you so much for showing us tonight, and also just the work that you folks do. It's just exciting and energizing just to listen to you talk about it. And I had a follow-up question though about just capacity, because gosh, it sounds like there's just such a need out there, and we're so situated so well to be able to hopefully provide that. I know one of the issues though is actually getting the kids out to where we need them to be. I mean, transportation, as simple as that sounds, but transportation is a big issue. Is there anything that we're able? First of all, are you finding that to be an issue, and is there anything that's being done about that?
Yeah, transportation. I agree with you. Yeah, we hear that from our partners. Transportation our preserves are really remote, right?
Yeah.
So we do in INE, separate from this youth partnership program, we do have a transportation assistance program.
Oh.
So we use that to provide bus transportation for our regular Spaces and Species field trip program if needed, as well as, we have a Save the Redwoods League field trip coming up next week. They opted in to use that, some of those funds. So I agree with you. Yeah, transportation and is a big barrier. So yeah, we always offer it as best we can, and we can increase that budget if we are using it up.
Yeah. And I think you said this at the start. How big is the budget, Ellen, that you have for this?
10,000 per fiscal year for the youth partnership program.
That doesn't sound like, I'm sorry, it doesn't sound like very much. I mean, is that, it's, although it does, you didn't say money was the constraint. It sounded like you said staff and docents were the constraint.
Yeah, I think currently that money is sufficient. It's just it's only been a couple years since we really have started building these partnerships, and it's incredible work that we've, I think, done so far, but I could maybe see that growing, down the line.
Well, yeah. I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for the other board, but I think there would be an appetite for us to think about that, because I think this is such a great opportunity. So thank you for presenting and letting us know.
Yeah, thank you.
I echo all of that. I mean, the thing that struck me was how many different groups you've connected with. I just see, here's a couple of folks, basically, what are there, 3 of you?
Yeah, 3
And
staff.
Shazam, you get all these connections and contacts and stuff. And that's not easy. I know that. Okay, there's a group over here. Okay, who's the contact person? How long have they been in the slot? What are their needs? Can we figure that out early on? What can we provide that would be beneficial to, it's a lot of working hard at trying to figure things out, and they never stay the same. But I really appreciate very much just seeing this is really exciting, how much has blossomed in the last, 2 or 3 years. I mean, we had a program 3 years ago, but it was nowhere near this. So spectacular.
It looks like Director Christine Tucker has a question.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. No questions. I just want to add my thanks, Ellen, to you and Jeff. This work is incredibly inspiring and exciting, and it's really hard to imagine something more important in this crazy day and age where kids are having so much trouble putting their phones down, than to get them out in our open space preserves and help them connect with nature. So I really appreciate the enthusiasm and the passion that you both bring to this, and echo my colleagues' thoughts about how we might help bolster this program with more capacity as we move forward. It just feels incredibly like one of those really incredibly important things that we do at the district for the future. So thank you both for your presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah, just to add on to what Kurt said, I think sometimes if you have a particular budget in mind, it limits what you think about doing with it, right? So you might have the 10K budget, and then you say, we're okay with that, but it's because you've only taken on a certain set of things. So sometimes if you said, what if I had a bigger budget, would I fundamentally try to do something different? It might be worth just having that brainstorm and to see if is there something where you can maybe unlock some other type of thing by going higher. And I totally agree that the big picture, this is not a lot of money, particularly for this type of activity. So I think if you have ideas there, we'd be happy to hear them.
Yeah, the other thing that comes to mind is also in the board report that I can't really speak to, but is the grant program of So there are other departments who connect with youth too that we, didn't share in this report because we were just focusing on I&E, but I can speak to a little bit to other volunteer programs outside of interpretation and education. There's a ton of stewardship projects, that connect with youth but that is a good point too. That always think about your horizons kind of, yeah. Stefan?
Stefan Jaslik, CFO. You've heard about a very great program and very hands-on, very interactive, but as Ellen said, there are also other programs that the district has. One big program is through public affairs, where it's almost like an outsourcing, where other entities bring in hikers, groups that we pay them for. And then we also, like Ellen said, we also have the grant program itself. So in all, when you add it all up, it's a lot more than $10,000, but that's the one-on-one hands-on approach. And then there's semi-outsourcing, and then there's also the grants, if you will. And that adds up, but I'm not disputing the fact that if there's more budget that they could use, that we should make it available.
Thank you for adding that element that there's another angle of what we're doing. Okay. Well, that closes item number 6. Is there any public comment?
We do not have any.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to make sure you get this card from the prior one. Okay, so are there any committee reports?
We do not have any.
Thank you. And staff report. Get you back up there, Brian.
All right, so I gave you a little preview of the backup plan for Bear Creek Stables. Was it last meeting, the meeting before that? And I pulled the cord and we're implementing the backup plan. So where we're at with the Friends of Bear Creek Stables, as a reminder, we had provided them a draft agreement. They'd come back on comments. We met and discussed those. Basically had some no's, some yeses, some kind of consideration. For example, I think I used they asked to continue to have dog access at the stables. After reviewing that, we decided that was a hard no, just because as a general stables things, having dogs increases the safety risk. And it's not necessary for providing public programming there. And so after that, we returned a document, and then we're expecting that back with comments from the Friends. And I've gotten a few things that I'm considering, but we haven't got the full comments back from their legal review of it. They've hired a lawyer to take a look at it. And knowing that there's no way at this point where we could get those comments, respond to them, and then get a final agreement to you at the next board meeting, we've decided not to try to bring a final agreement to the board at the next meeting. So instead, I'm going to bring, it'll probably just be on consent, an extension of the current stables services agreement, and extend it all the way out, with your approval, to July 2026. That being said, we're going to continue working on the agreement. We're very close. There's not really a lot of significant issues that separate us at this point. And so I would hope in early 2026 to bring you back a long-term agreement with the Friends of Bear Creek Stables to fully operate the stables for your review and approval if you decide to do so. So things are going well, but we decided not to rush it. And at the next meeting, we'll just be bringing as a consent item that extension for your review and approval.
Okay, any other staff presentations? Okay. Directors, Margaret.
I did a couple of things this last couple of weeks. I don't know if you know Puente. It's the the Latino group down at the coast that works with the local farm workers, and they had a little fundraiser at Tomcat Ranch, and it was very nice. I went to that, and the other one is the Santa Cruz Mountains Stewardship Network. Sorry, it's getting late. And they had their 10th anniversary celebration, and it was very uplifting. So I was glad I went to that. Thank you.
Yeah, first, I want to thank Brian for giving me a great tour around El Sereno. We, visited many different sites there. The original idea was to see some of the work that was going on the culvert and the roads, but we visited the fire resiliency areas and also the Edwards property that was purchased for the connection to the Bay Area Ridge Trail. So really appreciate that. That was very nice to see. And then also went to the Greenfoot Hills Nature's Inspiration. And then we had our last episode of the Spotlight Stewardship on Friday, and we visited the Laurel Curve Wildlife Crossing, as well as discussing forest health and fire resiliency projects in Soquel Demonstration State Forest and Forest of Nicene Marks. That's it.
Yeah, just very quickly, attended the backpack with Supervisor Abekoga at our Piketty Ranch Preserve. And thank you to staff and to our docents. They had 25 people. In fact, they had to cap it at 25 just because of the numbers of people. It's been a very popular event for the supervisor, and I'm really glad we've been able to participate with them. Also went to the Greenfoot Hills Nature's Inspiration that Craig had mentioned. Interesting, and Margaret, interesting comments by John Jarvis, who was the National Park Service superintendent. And gosh, the whiplash that he must be going through is just incredible. The Santa Cruz Mountain Stewardship Network, I'm just so happy that the district, I think, were we a charter member of that? And it was great to see our staff there and the support that we're providing and the benefits we're getting. And then finally, big shout out to our staff for the volunteer recognition event at Saratoga Springs on Saturday. Lots of people, really fun event. And I just get so energized by that group, that people are just so excited about the work that they do with us. So good job to staff though for pulling that off. That's it.
Well, I'm still in recovery mode, so I haven't had a chance to participate in other elements, but that soon will change. So there's nothing else this evening.
Just let me check with Director Christine Tucker if she has any updates.
Oh, thank you for asking. No, I don't. I'm welcoming my new knee to the world, and hopefully I will be back up
Good.
and running with you all shortly. Thank you.
Excellent. Heal quickly.
I'm working on it.
Excellent. Okay. Good night.
Good night.